Hello, this is Project Management Basics, everything you need to make your project a success. This is session 7 and we're going to be looking at issues. So we're getting quite a long way through the sessions now. All of them are practical, minimum jargon, looking at the free tools you can actually use to do this, and aiming for about 10 minutes a session. So sometimes things go wrong. Projects are uncertain in their nature. It's something that's never been quite done before. Things will crop up and occur that perhaps you didn't anticipate, or you anticipated but weren't able to stop. So you need to be able to deal with those issues when they come up and address them. So we talked about risks before, and this was our risk matrix. We had impact times probability as a way of identifying how significant the risk was, and hopefully we've identified the risks and managed them. So we had our risk, which we identified as an impact 5 and a probability 4, so quite a significant risk, and we did some mitigation actions to bring both the impact and the probability of that happening down. But we can, sometimes we can completely remove the probability, so it definitely won't happen. But in this case, there was still a potential for it to happen, and it did happen. And when it happens, the risk happens, it becomes an issue. So it's moved to an impact there, and then it's slid straight up. We might think about it like this way, to be certain, because it's happened now, and therefore it's above a 5 probability, it's a certainty. Now hopefully when it actually happens, the impact is what we anticipated it to be when we were estimating it. And this is useful to know, of course, because we want to be able to estimate with confidence about how risky a project is, and to understand therefore across the balanced set of risks, hopefully not everything we gave a low probability to happens, otherwise we're not very good at working with our risk estimates. But if only 1 in 10 of them happens, then okay, 1 in 10 of them has happened, and that's why we do this sort of bulk look at the risks and balance out that risk account, if you like. So this risk has definitely happened. There's going to be an impact. We have to deal with it, and so we have to get on and sort it out. So here's a few things we should think about. Firstly, don't take it personally. Something goes wrong on your project, it's happened on your watch, that never feels particularly good, but that's just projects. That's what you're there to deal with. You're not there to prevent everything from happening. It'd be great if you can, and I'm sure in some cases you might argue you could, but you'd expend an awful lot of money and time in doing that. So sometimes it's better to take those risks, minimize them as best you can. Sometimes they will happen, and then you deal with them. Should you escalate this issue? Now, you will have been given, and we talked earlier about our planning and risk and issue management and specification, that we're going to set up some sort of tolerances. You'll be told by the customer, the sponsor, how much control you have over the budget and timescale of the project, and perhaps this issue is so significant it's going to push those things out. In that case, you need to report it, or you might have a load of small ones, and in combination they're going to push out your costs and timescales, so you need to report that. So you need to be aware of whether you need to report these things or whether they lie within your tolerance to just get on and deal with it. You want to obviously identify the best solution to addressing the issue, and hopefully if you've done your risk management well and these things have come out of identified risks, you'll have done some of that already in the risk management, and you can then take these actions further forward. Obviously you want to then deliver those changes, those modifications to the project, and you want to remember acceptance. We were talking in the last session about delivery and acceptance. This is a change to perhaps the circumstance of the project. You will need to communicate that to make sure that people are happy that the circumstances around what they're getting might vary slightly. And of course you want to, thinking a bit further forward, help others avoid the same issue. So we might keep a log of these lessons, the things that have happened which have been which we might be able to do more to prevent later, or we obviously underestimated the probability of it, so we could pass that sort of feedback on to other people so they don't perhaps have that same issue. So let's go and look at some of that in practice. We're going to be using our risk and issue log here, which we can find within Community Edition. It's going to be in our plan and project controls. So here's my schedule risks and issues file. It's a planner file, so when I check it out to work on it, it's going to open in Planner, like my Word files open in Word and my Excel files open in Excel, etc. And here it is, and when we think back to Planner before, it covers plans and risks and issues for the project. We've got risks and issues here as a tab. Like I say, sometimes your issues come in from left field. You hadn't really anticipated them, and you can add an issue directly to the issue list if that's the case. But also you can take a risk and escalate it to an issue, and that's because that's what often happens, and certainly if you've managed a risk process well, that's what will happen. So we had the risk that we earlier identified. Suppliers might be late in delivery. If I right click on that, I can then copy that risk to be a new issue. Now it will have then put into the issue register that information. Of course it can't bring everything because the two fields are a little bit different, but it can bring me a lot of the things that I need to know. So it can bring me any comments I've written in here, any responses I've set up already. I've got my description here, which was the one I had from before for the risk. I know when it was identified and updated, and any other information like that that I've been collecting as part of that risk will be brought across for me. So that's really useful. I don't have to rewrite it all again, of course. And hopefully, like I say, if you've been managing those, you've been doing some of that work already, documenting what might happen. So here's my issue. I can fill it in a bit further, of course. I might want to just fill in some of the fields which don't match entirely. So here we've got who raised it, and I might want to now give it some sort of scaling. So I can say what the priority is for dealing with it and what the severity is. I'm going to readjudge this again because actually we've got a different scale here. Rather than our 5 by 5 that we had before for the risk, here we've got a severity scale which is 1 to 10. Probably need a little bit more granularity now these things are actually happening to work out which are the most important ones to deal with. So we've got severity and priority. Priority might give us some indication about how soon it's going to be that we need to make the decision, and severity obviously the significance of the issue that's happened. Like before, we've got comment. We could deal with that informal responses as we talked about last time, but the particular thing I want to talk about here is impact. So you've got this issue, and it's going to be a change perhaps to the project. It's going to require you probably to do some work, so it's good to understand how much that is. So we could say, well, it might cost us an extra 2 days and it's going to cost us that much money. Now we had before our magic triangle of project: cost, quality and time. And here are the three aspects we see again, because this change to the project brought about by the issue may have an impact on time, may have an impact on cost, may have an impact on quality as well. It could impact all three things. It might impact only one or two of them. So we can document that all down here. Quality impact, of course, it's a little bit more difficult to quantify perhaps, so we can give it a rating in terms of the significance of that quality impact, and we can write down some notes about it as well. So as we start to fill that information in, that's going to be rolled up for us and totaling that information across the issues in the project. So if I come to my other issue as well and put some information there, so we might say there's 3 days here and 500 and some sort of quality impact. That stuff's all been totaled up. And in fact, if I come to here, status, in my issues register, I can see that it's got the cumulative figures here for me across my full set of issues. I can see what the time, cost and quality impacts are, and that's really useful at keeping a sort of summary for me. Like I say, if I've got a tolerance that I've been given, okay, we want to deliver the project for X amount of money in N days, and you've got a tolerance of £2,000 and 5 days. Well, these two issues are taking you towards that, and so this this allows you to keep a good track of where that compounding effect of all the issues and changes you're dealing with are happening. And of course we want to then be able to communicate that and report it onto people, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next session. So we can make our changes to the register here, just save, close, check it back in. It's going to keep the versions for us, and in fact if we want to go back and look at earlier versions, we can come back and see that, and of course we might have updated the plan while we're at it, etc. If we are making changes, of course, we need to, as we say, for acceptance, just linking back to our previous delivery and acceptance session, we need to think about making sure that documentation of the change is brought down into the other sources. So we might be coming down to the product descriptions and modifying those slightly, or the work packages to reflect changes that have happened. And those may need to then go back to the people that own them to make sure they're happy with it all. So important part of the process, because projects don't always go to plan, they don't always happen in the smooth way that you anticipated. In fact, generally something will come along the way to try and trip you up. But it's important that you address it. You don't just try and sweep it under the carpet. You address it as soon as it comes up in an open, honest way. You manage the process. You document what you're doing so that you can be confident that when it comes to the end, you're going to still be able to get acceptance of your delivery. So let's just quickly recap ourselves. So that was talking about issues. We're going to be talking about reporting next, and of course there's a sort of cycle event through here. We might be delivering some things, issues might have come up before delivery, but we're running around these things a number of times, perhaps around our reporting cycle a number of times before we come into closing. So we're getting towards, the end of our project sessions here. Thank you.